I wasted 40 years being angry at people who forgot me in 5 minutes. And at 80, I finally realized forgiveness was never for them. It was always for me. When I was young, I thought forgiveness was something you gave to other people. I believed it was a gift, a moral high ground, a sign of being better than the one who hurt you. At 20, I wore grudges like armor. I thought anger made me strong. I thought remembering every insult protected me from being wounded again. What I did not understand was that I was not protecting myself. I was imprisoning myself. Every memory I refused to release became another stone in the wall around my heart. I carried old arguments into new rooms. I replayed conversations that ended decades ago, as if they were still happening. I convinced myself that holding on meant being loyal to my pain. At 40, I became more polite, but not more forgiving. I learned how to smile while keeping score. I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. I said, "I moved on," while secretly rehearsing what I would say if I ever got the chance to speak again. I didn't want peace. I wanted justice. I wanted apologies delivered in perfect sentences. I wanted people to understand how deeply they had hurt me. I wanted them to feel what I felt. And because I never received those perfect apologies, I stayed stuck. Waiting became my hobby. Resentment became my identity. By 60, my body began to slow down, but my mind did not. I still carried the same emotional luggage, just with weaker arms. I noticed how tired I felt after remembering certain people. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. I started to realize something uncomfortable. The people I was angry at were living their lives. Some had forgotten the events entirely. Some were already dead. Yet I was still here, paying interest on old debts no one was collecting anymore. I was the only one suffering. I was both the prisoner and the guard. The truth finally arrived quietly, not in a dramatic moment, not during a confrontation. It came one morning while I was making tea. I spilled some water, cursed under my breath, then laughed at myself. And in that simple laugh, I felt lighter than I had in years. That's when I understood. Forgiveness was not something you give to others. It is something you give to yourself when you are tired of carrying ghosts. The first person I truly forgave was my father. Not because he asked, not because he changed, but because I was finally old enough to see him clearly. When I was a child, I saw only his absence. I saw missed birthdays, broken promises, long silences. I built an image of him as a villain, because that was easier than accepting uncertainty. A villain gives you a target. A flawed human forces you to face complexity. For years, I blamed him for my fear of abandonment, for my difficulty trusting people, for my need to always be in control. He became the explanation for everything that went wrong in my life. But at 70, I found an old photograph. He was young, barely older than my grandson is now. His eyes looked tired, not cruel, confused, not heartless. For the first time, I wondered what he had carried, what dreams he buried, what fears shaped his choices. I realized I had spent most of my life demanding emotional maturity from someone who never had the chance to develop it. He wasn't evil. He was unfinished. Forgiving him did not rewrite the past. It did not magically heal every wound. But it did something more important. It stopped the bleeding. I no longer needed him to be different for me to be whole. I no longer needed answers to move forward. I accepted that some people hurt you not because they want to, but because they do not know how to love without damaging themselves first. After that, other names followed. Old friends, former partners, even myself. Especially myself. I forgave the younger version of me for staying too long in places that made me small. For loving people who could not love me back, for mistaking attachment for connection. I realized self-forgiveness is the hardest kind because it removes your favorite enemy. Without self-blame, you have no one left to punish. What surprised me most was how physical forgiveness felt. My shoulders relaxed. My breath deepened. I slept better. I spoke more gently. It was as if my nervous system finally received permission to rest. I had spent decades in emotional survival mode. Forgiveness switched the alarm off. I learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about remembering without bleeding. It is about telling your story without shaking. It is about reclaiming the parts of your mind that were rented out to pain. I didn't lose anything by forgiving. I gained myself back. There is a lie we are taught early in life. The lie says that if you forgive, you lose, that you become weak, that you let people escape accountability. But at 80, I can say with certainty that unforgiveness is far more dangerous than any betrayal I ever experienced. Anger feels powerful, but it slowly poisons the container holding it. You think you are hurting someone else, but you are burning your own house to keep others warm. I spent years replaying arguments in my head. I imagined winning conversations that already ended. I constructed imaginary apologies from people who would never speak them. These mental loops gave me a false sense of control. I felt active while actually being trapped. My past dictated my present. Every decision was filtered through old wounds. I thought I was being careful, but I was just being afraid. The moment I began forgiving, something strange happened. My memory changed. Not the facts, but the emotional weight. Events that once felt sharp became softer. Not erased, but deflated. They no longer demanded my attention. They became stories instead of scars. I could tell them without shaking. I could think about people without feeling bitterness in my chest. I didn't become indifferent. I became free. Forgiveness did not turn me into a saint. I still feel hurt. I still feel disappointment. But those emotions now pass through me instead of building homes inside me. I stopped feeding resentment daily. I stopped identifying as a victim. I allowed myself to be a survivor instead. One of the most unexpected lessons was realizing that forgiveness is not a single decision. It is a practice. Some days, old feelings return. Old memories knock on the door. Forgiveness does not mean they never come back. It means you no longer invite them to stay. You acknowledge them. You breathe. You choose again. I also learned that boundaries and forgiveness can coexist. Forgiving someone does not mean giving them access to you. It means removing their control over your emotional space. You can forgive and still walk away. You can forgive and still say no. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. It is release. At 80, I finally understand that most suffering is recycled. We inherit it. We amplify it. We pass it forward. Forgiveness breaks the cycle, not by pretending harm never happened, but by refusing to let it define what happens next. The greatest irony is this: the people I forgave rarely noticed. Some never knew. Some never cared. But my life changed anyway. That is when I understood the deepest truth. Forgiveness is not about them. It never was. It is about choosing peace over familiarity with pain. The hardest person I ever forgave was not my father, my friends, or my partners. It was myself. I carried a silent courtroom inside my mind for decades. I was both the judge and the accused. Every mistake became evidence. Every regret became a sentence. I punished myself for not being brave enough, not leaving sooner, not speaking up, not trusting my instinct. I replayed moments where I stayed quiet when I should have defended myself. I blamed myself for relationships that failed, careers that stalled, dreams that dissolved. Self-forgiveness feels impossible because we know our own intentions. We cannot hide from our thoughts. We remember every excuse, every lie, every compromise. We hold ourselves to standards we never apply to anyone else. We demand perfection from a human being who was learning in real time. That is cruelty disguised as responsibility. One night I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My face was older than my expectations. My eyes carried decades of experience and exhaustion. I asked myself a simple question. If this was someone else, would I be this harsh? The answer was no. I would be kinder. I would understand context. I would see effort. I would acknowledge growth. But with myself, I saw only failure. So I tried something radical. I spoke to myself as if I were my own child, not with excuses, with compassion. I said, "You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. You did not have today's wisdom back then. You made choices from survival, not from clarity. That does not make you weak. It makes you human." Forgiving myself did not remove responsibility. It removed shame. Responsibility allows learning. Shame only creates paralysis. I finally allowed myself to grow without constantly paying emotional fines for old mistakes. I accepted that some chapters end badly, not because you are broken, but because they were not meant to last. The moment I forgave myself, my posture changed. My voice softened. I stopped narrating my life like a tragedy. I stopped seeing my past as evidence against me and started seeing it as proof of endurance. I survived everything I once thought would destroy me. Self-forgiveness is not forgetting who you were. It is honoring who you became. It is releasing the version of yourself that needed pain to feel worthy of growth. At 80, I no longer need suffering to justify wisdom. I allow peace to be enough. Now, at 80, forgiveness feels less like an action and more like a natural state. I do not wake up looking for enemies. I wake up looking for light. I no longer measure my life by what was taken from me, but by what remains. And what remains is surprisingly simple. Breath, memory, gratitude, presence. Forgiveness did not make my life perfect. It made it quiet. A different kind of quiet than loneliness. A quiet without noise inside the chest. A quiet where thoughts no longer argue with each other. A quiet where old names no longer trigger physical reactions. I can think about the past without feeling the need to fix it. The most beautiful result of forgiveness is space. Mental space. Emotional space. Space to notice small things. The way sunlight moves across the wall. The sound of my own footsteps. The comfort of sitting without distraction. When resentment left, awareness entered. I became more present in moments that once passed unnoticed. I used to think peace was boring. I thought intensity meant meaning. Now I know peace is not empty. It is full of subtle richness. It allows you to finally live in the present, instead of constantly negotiating with the past. If you are younger than me and reading this, understand this. Forgiveness is not a weakness you develop after being hurt. It is a skill you practice to avoid becoming bitter. Start early. Forgive small things. Forgive often, not because people deserve it, but because your nervous system deserves rest. You do not need closure. You do not need apologies. You do not need people to change for you to be free. You need only one decision: to stop letting yesterday dictate how today feels. Forgiveness will not make you forget what happened. It will change how much power it has. It will turn pain into memory, memory into story, and story into wisdom. At 80, I can finally say this without doubt. The greatest gift I ever gave myself was not success, or love, or security. It was letting go. Forgiveness did not make me lose my past. It gave me my present back. And that, in the end, is what freedom actually feels like.